Hey, everybody, welcome to the morning market briefing. It's Wednesday, November 9th, 2022. Hope you're doing well. Quick pulse on the markets before we jump in. Dow futures down 41 basis points. S&P futures down 30, NASDAQ down 30, oil down just a little bit. For all the Bitcoin holders out there, Bitcoin, it's rallied a little bit. It's at 17.5. We'll definitely talk a little bit about some of the crypto challenges here in a little bit. But first, opening up with election results, certainly not the red wave that many people were looking for. If anything, maybe more of a stalemate, maybe a few gains on the margin for Republicans, but Democrats showed up and were able to kind of hold most of their territory. Actually picked up Pennsylvania on that Senate race, although I don't know that that's officially been called. Maybe it has. Ben, high-level thoughts.
Yeah, I think that the Republican Party needs to do some big time soul searching. I mean, they've only gained a majority share of the popular vote in the presidential election once in the last 34 years. So that's not good. The Senate is actually designed for Republicans. It was built for the conservative government in order to get different states represented. And the fact that they're struggling so badly to win it with such an unpopular president is pretty alarming, or should be, for Republican Party. And this is also the weakest midterm showing by the minority party, the non-presidential party, since 2002. The Republicans right now are forecast to pick up about 7 seats in the House of Representatives. The incumbent party typically loses 24 to 25 seats in the House at the midterms. So very, like, if using those historical analogs, Republicans really underperformed historically, not to mention the unpopularity of the current president. I think that in the last few days, I think the abortion issue really played a significant role. I think that's why you saw Washington and Oregon go blue. People citing abortion as a major issue. In 2020, 89% of Republicans said abortion was a major issue. This time, 19% of Republicans, whereas 77% of Democrats now say it's a major issue versus 9% in 2020. I would say Republicans do seem to be gaining some share among ethnic minorities. The Black vote fell from 83 to 68% edge. The Hispanic vote fell from a 31 to an 18% edge. And the Republicans also improved with suburban women. They actually won that vote by 7 points this time. I think the big question going forward on the political side is, does Trump see the writing on the wall that he's not going to just be able to walk in to the presidency in 2024 if he gets the nomination? Because right now it seems like he would definitely be the underdog, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a couple Trump-related observations that should at least be noted. It's early. I don't know if these will necessarily stand the test of time, but a couple things stand out to me. Number one, I think the polling was pretty accurate. Ben and I talked about that before the call earlier this morning. The polling was pretty accurate. I think some of the conclusions that were drawn from the polling gave an overly optimistic look for Republicans. And specifically, I think a lot of folks were looking at how Republicans were polling in specific areas relative to how they performed in 2020. And you were seeing improvements, 3, 4, 5 points better for this candidate than Trump did in 2020. I think that actually speaks more to the weakness of Trump in 2020 than it does to the strength of these Republican candidates. The most clear winners in a lot of ways in some of these races for Republicans were on the governorship side, and DeSantis and Kemp, two folks that are hardly aligned with Donald Trump, came away with fairly decisive victories. I think Republicans have got to get back and actually nominate relatively decent candidates. I do not like career politicians, but there is something to be said for having people out there that maybe don't have as much baggage, as many skeletons in the closet as some of the candidates that the Republicans rolled out. Georgia likely heading to a runoff. Hard to imagine that there won't be additional shoes to drop on Herschel Walker and his history and background. And the reality is, I'm not even talking politics here. If you're surprised by some of these stories and some of these reports that have come out with Herschel Walker, whether you believe them or don't, I don't know where you've been. Like, I followed Herschel's later career in business or whatever, just because I'm a Georgia, MMA, just because I'm a Georgia football fan, and nothing that has been said about Herschel Walker has surprised me at all. And so the fact that Republicans have chased so aggressively after name recognition as opposed to the ability to withstand an election cycle, I think has really hurt them in the state of Georgia and elsewhere. And you see that very, very clearly. Kellyanne Conway somehow still gets to talk on TV, and she noted that, essentially said, I had the quote earlier, but that this was, kind of a victory for Herschel Walker. It showed that, he could really contend, and that's just not true. At the time that she said that, he was actually lagging Warnock. This was close to midnight last year. He was clearly not going to get to the 50% threshold, and he was underperforming Brian Kemp by 4 or 5 points. So Republicans have got to go back to square one and actually find a way to put legitimate candidates on the ballot if they want to have a chance. The Democrats are going to continue to make elections about single issues or very narrow issues. Ben, you mentioned abortion. I think that was a big factor in this. They're much more effective at making election turnout come as a result from 1 or 2 things than the Republicans. The fact that people are as worried about inflation and the economy as they are, and we did not see a reversal here, speaks to the combination of poor candidates from Republicans and an inability to actually get concise messaging across. But there is nuance in how Republicans voted. You see a spread between Kemp and Walker, and there's many other cases like that. And I think the Republican Party needs to figure that out. Tom, any thoughts, comments, concerns?
2 thoughts. First thought is it's got to be a little bit of an ego hit for Warnock, though, to almost lose to an illiterate. That's got to be tough. Like, you got to think, like, that guy's put a lot of work in. He's a legitimate candidate, and he still can't win in a runoff against a guy who can't read. The second thought would be, in terms of the turnout, I mean, to your point, if you can convince people to go outside and throw rocks and burn down police buildings, it's a pretty easy ask to get them to go vote. And so I think that that's sort of the mode there. It's like, we need to convince people to burn calories for both parties. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see this. I mean, that's sort of I would say it's more of a cultural shift across parties, but like, the weaponized outrage, like, the thing about that is those people burn calories, so whether it be the abortion issue or any one issue that gets people to vote, if you're going to like scream and yell in someone's face at a grocery store because they're not wearing masks,
you're probably going to vote.
It's super easy just to go show up at the old Tommy Novus Center up in Kennesaw and cast a ballot.
Or mail in a ballot. I will say I feel like the ballot counting was a lot better than 2020. Even the news networks, I was kind of flipping across them. It was actually nice that all of them were being pretty open and transparent in terms of, hey, there's 18% reporting. Most of this is mail-in voting. It's going to be Democrat heavy. Don't read too much into these results. I felt like there was a little bit more command of the data as it was coming in, which is probably a positive for people that have concerns about legitimacy of elections. It actually seemed like the news, which is how we absorb so much of this stuff, across different networks, were building a cohesive narrative about where these votes were coming from. And that I actually thought was one of the positives of last night, just as a general observation. It seemed like somewhat under control.
Yeah. I mean, I think to me, the big thing is Republicans are in a tough spot. They've won the popular vote once in my lifetime. And that was in 2004. So, and I think that going forward in terms of the economic and market implications, I think on the economy side, I think that it'll take a little bit of a breath, and not necessarily in a good way. I think that there were some Republicans hoping for this to, especially like business owners, looking for this to catalyze and potentially increase oil drilling and things like that, and investment. That's not going to happen on the Democrat side. I think it'll just be a continuation of the kind of the malaise that we've seen. So I think on the economic side, I think it's probably a small net negative in terms of something actually getting done. I think that's pretty much zero, though, because the House is not going to pass a bill. So regardless of whether or not the Democrats retain or lose control of the Senate, that's not going to really change all that much.
It's not as much of an issue
because you still need both chambers. So yeah, I mean, even if you're trying to get something through budget reconciliation, you still need the House.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like we talked about this in the investment committee meeting yesterday. I can't remember if we did on the call or not. A lot of the optimistic expectations from Republicans as this related to what would the election look like and what would the economic outcome be. A lot of that was kind of fantasy land for me to begin with, because so much of the restrictive policy, specifically in the energy sector, has been by executive order and set, the tone very much set and enforced by the president. And that obviously was not going to change at a midterm election. Switching gears, Meta up about 3%, planning big layoffs to the tune of 11,000 workers, about 13% of the workforce, reducing their expenses for 2023. Ben, good move, bad move?
I think it's a good move. I think Zuckerberg saw got the message the markets were sending. He is cutting operating expense guidance for next year. He's cutting CapEx guidance for next year, which I think is good. It's going to be good for the stock. Whether or not that actually manifests in sustained stock outperformance remains to be answered, because you're still going to have to fight some revenue headwinds going into next year.
Tesla is up a little bit. It was up about 2% earlier on news that Elon Musk sold quite a few shares, $4 billion worth. Might have been kind of holding the stock back as he's trying to get that out. Might have been part of the Twitter purchase. So some decent news there. Adidas up about 3%, despite cutting earnings per share by half for the fiscal year. What's your takeaway there, Ben?
They said that they were doing pretty well in July and August. They were comping in the high single digits, so 7 to 9%. But that slowed dramatically in September, where they saw deteriorating traffic trends in China and slowing consumer demand in major Western markets. It looks like they are now implementing a business improvement plan, which is designed to ensure the company's profitability next year. So it doesn't seem like the revenue trajectory is going to change anytime soon. So tough right now in apparel.
Disney reported earnings. They're down about 8%. Kind of a mixed bag of numbers. I think the stock is probably justifiably down. I don't know about 8%, but when you look at Disney Plus subscribers, numbers came in very strong. ESPN Plus subscribers pretty strong, but their average revenue per user taking a hit there. Ben, what else did you see?
It was just kind of and I listened to the whole conference call, and it seems like analysts really have lost confidence in management. They're coming out with this ad-supported Disney Plus. They're going to raise prices on Disney Plus, but none of that's really going to impact their revenue in December quarter, and it's only going to impact modestly for the full year. They lost a ton of money on the business, and throughout this all, they've been saying that they're going to hit profitability in 2024, which I think the assumption was they're going to be profitable in 2024 on the direct-to-consumer business. And I think analysts were giving them a pass on that. Now they said, well, at least one quarter in 2024 will be profitable. We don't know about the other three, which to me is just, it's a very weak, they weren't necessarily wrong, and it's not necessarily a guidance change, but it is a guidance change because they never clarified that before. The implication was that they'd be profitable for the year. That's not the case. Analysts are going to adjust their models down, which is definitely going to hurt their models going forward and the profits of the direct-to-consumer business. I think Disney's in a bit of a tough spot right now. Shanghai is closed. Their Shanghai park is closed. There's no reopening timeline. That COVID's an issue there. They say the advertising market is fluid, which is a bit of a downgrade from prior statements. They said they saw strength in political, pharma, insurance, and restaurant ads, but weakness elsewhere. So they're not executing very well. And I think the longer the current management team persists in their current roles, the longer they go down a path where they'll need a hard reset. If they can reset sooner, they might just need a nudge in the right direction. But the longer that this maintains, the more that a hard reset is going to be needed going forward.
DR Horton down about 3%. Revenue came in under expectation at 9.6 billion versus an expectation of about 10.2. 13,582 orders versus the expectation of 13,300. Backlog relatively strong, but they're seeing a lot of cancellations, up 19% year over year. They say that beginning in June, they started seeing moderation in housing demand caused by significant increases in mortgages, but they do note that these pressures may persist and there's still a supply issue as it relates to some of these homes, especially more at the entry level. Ben, how would you kind of assess their quarter or anything else to add?
I think the cancellations are a big deal. Home builders, right now, I think that home builders are maintaining their price point because they're offering tremendous incentives. I know one person who's currently buying a house in Jacksonville who was offered $75,000 off the $500,000 list price, and they were done in terms of rebates and closing and like all these things. And so he's getting a house for $425 that's gonna sell for $500 before the rebate. So that's how they're keeping the price point up. That's something to watch going forward. Is these rebates and incentives that the builders are providing.
Affirm, which is one of those buy now, pay later platforms, down about 15%. Probably a pretty good read through on the health of consumers. They do a lot of Peloton business. I pay Affirm every month for my Peloton. It was kind of a no brainer when I did it. I am not delinquent, but they're starting to see some delinquency. They're close to the 2019 levels. They're trying to mitigate that in a bunch of different ways, including trying to get people to just pay off their loans a little bit more. But a big story from yesterday is FTX, the crypto brokerage, really taking a hit. Tom, I know you're a big crypto guy. Explain what happened.
Yeah, so basically they had a bank run. People were trying to withdraw, an enormous amount of Bitcoin all at the same time. We saw a big pullback in the price of Bitcoin, and they basically just didn't have it. And in order to stay liquid, they basically were forced to sell themselves to Binance, which I believe is based in China, the Chinese cryptocurrency exchange. I have some Ripple that I bought like back in 2016 that was on Binance, but then I forgot my login. So somewhere out there's some Ripple, whatever that's worth, under my name that I couldn't get back into my Binance account. But it basically was just, basically D-Day 2.0 for Bitcoin. The last big one was when Luna and the Terra USD coins broke $1 and started to spiral and basically went worthless. There's a lot of if you remember back to the Super Bowl, there were a ton of FTX commercials. I believe one was the one with Matt Damon, equating crypto with going to the moon and fighting D-Day. I know Tom Brady took a big payout from them to do some endorsements in the form of equity, and that's probably at zero now. So chalk it up to another L for the second best quarterback of all time. So just
behind Stetson,
just right behind Stetson. And so it's just another loss for the Bitcoin community, the crypto community, which, for years, we had to fight off questions about why can't we buy Bitcoin in accounts. Luckily, from an SEC standpoint, we couldn't do it. Otherwise, we may have had some clients who bought it inside their accounts. But if this is not the 2022 version of the pets.com, I don't know what is, where it was just a cash grab where it went up for no reason. Everybody got into it. And now it's just, as soon as the economy cracked a little bit, it just washed out with the sea.
Ben, any thoughts on the crypto issues? It just seems like every couple months we get another big wave of concern.
Yeah, it's clearly not a store of value. And this is where having a currency backed by the full faith and credit of reliable, for all its foibles, government is actually beneficial. Shockingly, there was a reason that we decided to institute the Federal Reserve at one point. There was a reason for having the currency, because the stability of systems, even if it's on the blockchain, to maintain value has proved perilous over time.
If you love crypto, I've got some wampum for you that you're just going to love.
There we go. Bitcoin down 73% over the last year. So tough times for most places in various markets, real tough time for crypto. So not exactly the hedge against financial volatility that many people thought it would be. We'll wrap it up there. We'll be back tomorrow. Big day tomorrow. Everybody ready?
CPI.
CPI. All right. Talk to y'all soon.